Hello everyone and welcome to the MUSG Good Tenant Training for 2023 and 2024. My name is Ryan Lardner. I am the Outreach Vice President for Student Government this year, and I am running this training. So overall, the training is going to encompass four key aspects of apartment living. So first of all, it's going to encompass the leasing timeline and important dates. Then also too, we are going to have a brief safety breakdown taken from last year's presentation. We're going to view some sustainability tips by Chelsea Malacara. And we are also going to go over apartment living best practices. Okay, so now for the timeline. So from October 16th to the 27th, you are either going to pay your housing deposit or take the leasing quiz to receive a deposit waiver. Please note that the leasing quiz has an early deadline of October 25th to be completed. Then current apartment residents will have the opportunity to rebook their current apartment from the 23rd to the 30th of October. You can add, during this time, you may add any roommates to your booking. And then on November 1st, you can book a different apartment as a current resident. Then new apartment residents from November 3rd through the 6th, they will view their online selection times through the booking system. And then general apartment selection starts on November 6th at 4 p.m. and goes until 10 p.m. Apartment selection for all the apartments takes place between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. and then single space and random roommate bookings will take place for the Mark at 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. Please note that the Mark is the only apartment that has random roommate and single space bookings. Okay, so the next section is campus safety. This section will include the do's and don'ts of living on your own from a safety perspective. So Officer Witchgers will go ahead and take it away. Do you want to kind of get started?
Sounds good, thank you. So today I've got with me Sergeant Barrio Schrader.
Hello.
And so we'll be just going over some of the basic safety things and things to consider as you move into off-campus housing. So when you're going through and looking at apartments or houses or whatever facility you're gonna be living in, some things to kind of keep an eye out for are, sufficient lighting. Not that it's just there, but it's actually in good working order as well. What we see a lot of times is, you check out something during the day and you're not sure if all those lights are functioning. So just making sure you're checking into that. Looking at things like landscaping, you want shrubs, bushes, trees, things like that. You want those trimmed properly to allow light in, especially at night, let that street lighting in, and it allows for better lines of sight. In particular, in apartments, you're looking at the common areas, making sure they're properly secured, and just kind of understanding your routes to and from those different areas. Even in a house where you have a large number of roommates, and you have some common areas or maybe a couple different entry points, making sure those are always properly secured. The other thing you want to take a look at is doors and windows. You want to make sure they're in good working order, that they're proper quality, that somebody doesn't have a thinner interior door as an exterior door, things like that. The lower level windows, what you want to look for is that they have the proper security features. So ground level floors shouldn't open past a certain point, to prevent people from potentially climbing into the window. So maybe addressing those issues if you decide to sign a lease, working with the landlord on those sorts of things. And then looking at your garage and storage areas, that it's, again, proper lighting, that there's good security, that, the locks or whatever, keeping your property secured appropriately. Some other safety things you want to look at are fire extinguishers and smoke detectors. not that they're just there, but they're up to date and in good working order. Fire extinguishers, for example, should be checked, I believe, annually. So you want to make sure that they're up to date, and also just kind of familiarizing yourself with how they work. Um, they're a pretty simple device, but in under a stressful moment, it's easy to forget there's some minor steps. So just kind of familiarize yourself with that sort of equipment. And then just overall that, it appears that the property is being maintained properly and that there's a good appearance. This is a big one. So house safety, the big one with locking. It sounds like something very simple, but oftentimes especially when the houses where there's a large number of people living in them, what we tend to see is with everybody coming and going, they're not always locking the door because they're anticipating a roommate will be returning shortly or somebody's already there, always going to be there. Um, Avoid that. A number of the burglars that we've seen over the years, oftentimes the point of entry is a unlocked or unsecured front or back door. So get yourself and your roommates in the habit of locking those doors. At night, leaving an outside light on. Again, it's a basic security measure that's a simple practice. If you believe that somebody's in your house, call MUPD immediately. That regardless if you're in the house and you think you hear somebody coming in, or if you're arriving home and you're not sure if somebody's in your residence. If you're arriving to your residence and you believe somebody's in there, don't enter the house. Contact MUPD, and we can conduct a check of the house to make sure everything's safe. Avoid keeping valuables don't keep them in plain sight. In particular, like very close to windows. Something that's occurred as long as I can remember, even when I was in college. You'll find some of these older houses don't necessarily have the best air conditioning and things like that, so there's a tendency to want to open those windows. Um, and they could easily just cut a screen and grab property that's sitting on a shelf near a window. And you don't want anybody to be able to walk by and see through your larger windows. So keep curtains drawn. You don't want to keep something in plain view that they can potentially come back for at a later date. Securing windows again and air conditioning units in the windows. You want to make sure, I mean, for safety, so it's not falling in your room or out of to the outside onto somebody, but so somebody can't remove that and get a point of entry through there. Um, it don't let strangers coming in. If somebody comes and knocks on your door and asks for a phone or something like that, don't let them use your phone. Maybe you can make the call for them, but certainly don't let them in the house. And the candles, don't fall asleep with them lit, and make sure you're putting them out a substantial amount of time prior to going to bed because those embers can still linger. So you want to make sure that the candle's completely out before you go to bed. Um, and again, like I mentioned, some of these houses, apartments might be older and their electrical outlets might have limited capacity. So, make sure you're talking to your landlord so that you're not creating any fire hazards by overloading an outlet. And then keeping, again, if you're in an apartment building that has a common entry point like a lobby, make sure that door is secured, and avoid letting people piggyback. What that means is you are opening the door to your apartment and somebody comes running up and tries to come in at the same time you are. Um, let that door close, and if somebody that's allowed in the building, they'll have access, and then you just let them know, hey, I just want to keep our building safe. So sorry I didn't recognize you as somebody that lives in the building, something along those lines. Um, Something that you all want to do if you haven't done it already is downloading the Eagle Eye app. Recommend downloading it, and then once you do familiarize yourself with it, there's a number of tools on the Eagle Eye app. One of the things that you get is the text alerts. Um, there's all of the emergency contacts that you would need. You can have access to a mobile blue light. There's a feature called the friend walk, which allows you to kind of track each other. So you can send your location and destination to a friend, and they can watch your breadcrumbs to make sure you get home safely. And then beyond that, there's just a number of other resources uh, through MUPD and the university that you can access through the Eagle Eye app. So one of the services that we offer, it's called the Vacant House Watch. This is something that's done throughout the academic break, so during winter break and spring break. You go onto our website and you could register your house. Now, this only applies to off-campus housing in our Marquette's patrol area. This does not, um, we can't use this for apartment buildings. But what it is you register, you indicate the dates and times you're gone and the dates and times you return, and MUPD can conduct regular checks of your residence while you're gone on break. So some other services that we offer. Uh, One is a program called Report It. So if you just want to reach out to us, it's a program where you create an account and you can register a certain property, put in serial numbers, take photos, things like that. You keep it with your account so that if those items are ever stolen or lost, when you contact MUPD to file a report, you open up your account and you notify the officer of the property that was lost or stolen. We take that information and then we input it into a separate database, um, which will conduct searches of like national law enforcement databases, pawn shops, things like that, and helps us to try to locate your property if it's ever lost or stolen. Something else that we can do, in working with your landlords, it's called crime prevention through environmental design. So we can come over along with you and your landlord and just conduct an evaluation of the property and making sure that some of the things that we discussed earlier, doors, windows, lighting, landscaping, things like that, are appropriate and in the best working order to make sure you have a safe place to stay.
Our next section is about campus sustainability. So Chelsea Malakara actually made a video to be utilized for this training. So I'm just going to be playing that next.
Hello, my name is Chelsea Malakara, Marquette University's Sustainability and Energy Management Coordinator. This presentation, Saving Your Pocket and the Planet, Tips and Tricks to Managing Your Energy, will help you understand basic energy terms and simple measures you can take while living here at Marquette and beyond to reduce your energy use and costs. First, I want to give you a brief overview of Marquette's commitment to energy and emission reductions. In 2018, Marquette published its very first campus sustainability plan, which outlined goals to meet by 2025, including reducing CO2 emissions by 25%, reducing water use by 10%, and reducing energy use intensity, which is energy use by square foot, by 10%. This presentation will give you the tools to be a part of reducing Marquette's carbon footprint. Let's start with some terms you should know. Energy management is the process for enhancing financial and environmental position of an organization by using less energy to provide the same services. Energy efficiency is using less energy to provide the same services, for example, installing LED lights and power strips. Energy conservation involves behavior change to save energy, for example, turning off the lights when you leave a room or powering down your computer when you're not using it. A BTU. A BTU is the amount of heat required to raise 1 pound of water by 1 degrees Fahrenheit. An electricity energy, or kilowatt hour, is electrical power times time, also known as consumption. So where does your energy come from in Milwaukee? The electricity and steam that come to campus is sourced from We Energy's Valley Power Plant on Canal Street, right near campus. In 2015, the plant fully converted from coal to natural gas, which drastically reduced emissions. As a cogeneration plant, it produces both steam and electricity. For most apartments, steam is what heats your apartment, and electricity is what powers devices and keeps the lights on. Now we will do a quick overview on how to read your energy bill. For many folks, the first bill you receive might be the first time you're seeing one. So Section 1 is the contact and emergency phone numbers. Power or electricity issues in your specific room may warrant submitting a service request through the FPM website or the Facilities Planning and Management website. But We Energies can be contacted for larger power outages or large emergencies. Typically, that's something that your resident director will already have taken care of. Number 2 is the bill date, account number, next meter reader date, and amount due, and the payment due date. Section 3 is the customer name and service address. It's important when you move in or even before to get the account switched over into your name. You can do that by calling the customer service number. Number 4, account summary with usage and cost comparison graphs. This can be a useful tool to track your usage over time, especially after you have implemented some energy efficiency and energy conservation measures. 5, activity since last bill, including previous balance and payment and current charges and the balance. Number 6 is your electric use or your consumption. 7 is the natural gas use, which you will likely not see on your bill. Number 8 is the payment stub to include with your payment. This bottom half is cut off and you put it in the envelope that is provided with your bill. You can also set up online payments. 9 is the amount due and due date on the payment stub, and 10 is the payment mailing address. Before we move on to energy conservation and efficiency measures, this slide provides a few resources you may find useful while here on campus and beyond. Now we will put the power in your hands and go over some simple low to no cost energy efficiency and energy conservation measures you can implement both in university apartments and after you leave Marquette University. You can save energy by bumping up the temperature a few degrees at night in the summer and dropping it a few degrees at night in the winter. If all these devices are on and in use, you are still drawing energy. Even when you turn all these things off, you're still using energy. This is called phantom power. You can eliminate phantom power by simply toggling off the power strip, like this. When you're done using items or they are not used frequently, unplug them. Using the cold setting on the washing machine is another way to save energy and still get your clothes clean. Closing blinds whenever you leave your apartment or dorm keeps your place cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter, reducing the need for additional mechanical cooling and heating. By adding a rug to your wood floor, your apartment won't feel so cold and you won't need to turn up your thermostat so high. This will save energy. If you have a leaky faucet, a broken radiator, or any other kind of issue in your room, you can submit a service request on the Facilities Management and Planning website. Oh look, facilities planning and maintenance must have fixed my leaky faucet. No more wasted energy going down the drain. LED light bulbs are about 4 times more efficient than compact fluorescent light bulbs and up to 10 times more efficient than incandescent light bulbs. It's a no-brainer to replace the lights you use with LEDs. Remember to take them out when you leave. I have to remember I'm paying for this now. I need to turn off the lights every time I leave.
Okay, so before we get into best practices, I would just like to note that the MARC does use its own facilities planning and management system through the resident portal, and also they do issue electric bills through the resident portal as well. So and getting into best practices for apartment living, there are some things to consider. So when you are selecting an apartment, you may be choosing between living alone and living with roommates. There are some pros and cons to both. When you live alone, you have your own space and time, so you can do what you wish. You have no one else to clean up after. However, it can be lonely or difficult to socialize, but it is quieter. And also too, it can be more expensive to live alone versus with roommates, so you have to look at what your budget is. Living with roommates, you have to share a space effectively, and deal with others. You should always create a roommate agreement, and also you are jointly and severally liable, which means that everybody who lives in that residence is responsible for any damage or anything that happens in that residence if you guys are all on the same lease. So just keeping that in mind. Moving on, so here are some topics that you should consider when doing a roommate agreement. I would also like to note that some of these are applicable to only shared leasing, and the MARC is an exception to this as it is individual leasing by room. So there are some things that with sharing a space that you do want to handle in your roommate agreement, but dividing of utilities and rent will not be one of them if you live in the MARC, or if you live in any university housing, because the university will bill straight from your checkmark account. So basically, you're going to want to go over how is rent going to be handled, who is going to pay what amounts. For example, if somebody has the larger bedroom, for example, and they have their own bathroom, whereas you have a smaller bedroom and you share a bathroom, you may want to pay less than the person who has more space, etc. So, how are utilities going to be handled and put in whose names? Typically, if you have electric, you would just put that in one person's name, and that person would pay the bill and then collect whatever is owed from the rest of the roommates. Personally, and then for other utilities, it would be the same type of thing. If you have to do Wi-Fi for off-campus housing, then you would split it that way as well, and you would want to work that out early on. What happens if somebody studies abroad, graduates early, moves out? Is there going to be a subletting process? Are you allowed to sublet in your building? You should check with your landlord for that. And how are you going to deal with like rent due dates, and if somebody is late? And that is something that you have to consider if you're living off campus, because on campus housing, rent is split typically equally amongst everybody who's living there. So you also have to talk about quiet hours and having guests over. Is there going to be restrictions on having guests? What does that look like? What hours need to be quiet versus not? And things like that. And then also household duties are very, very important. Make sure that you are dividing equally the dishes, trash, vacuuming, mopping, things like that pertain to the common areas and common spaces. Making sure everybody is keeping it clean is very important. Okay, continuing on, proper conduct and cleanliness practices. So best practice for cleaning is making a cleaning schedule for both your apartment in the ground. So if you live on university, like in a university owned apartment, you don't have to worry about the like landscaping or anything like that. But just check with your landlord, make sure that all of that is taken care of, and if it's not, you would have to divide that with your roommates. Just make sure that you know what you're responsible for. In university housing, there will be no smoking. That is not allowed. No smoking of any kind. And then make sure that whenever something breaks or there's something going on, make sure that you go ahead and contact maintenance for that to fix it. Instead of trying to fix it yourself, because it can be more costly to fix it yourself. And that's something that's really nice about living in on-campus housing, is that you can always contact facilities management and planning, and they will get it taken care of for you. You don't even have to worry about it. So also too, learning how to properly use your appliances and how to clean them is very important to make sure that there's no damage. And then also checking with snow removal, since we do have seasons, just checking to see who is responsible for snow removal. Okay, So best practices for apartment living continued. Subletting. So subleasing or subletting is finding someone to take your place, and mitigate monetary liability. You are still, just to note, you are still responsible if the person does not pay or if they leave anything damaged or dirty. So making sure that you're checking up on them, making sure you're visiting, after, taking pictures of the before and after, making sure that everything is good like that. Draft a separate agreement with your sublet to cover your bases. Make sure it's in writing. Make sure they sign it. Everything like that. And yes, like I said before, come back and do your own final inspection prior to or during move out. Make sure that in your lease you know if subleasing is allowed, or how your lease is set up with that. Is there an application process or an additional fee, etc., etc. Okay, so that was the last slide on that. So to learn more about the selection process and university apartment options, please visit Marquette edu/residence-life/apartments, and you can find information on that. Finally, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to me at musg.ovp@marquette.edu.